Decisions that change the course of a life forever. A seemingly harmless bet can become the most devastating sentence a man can face. Diego Hernandez believed his money could buy anything, that his power was absolute, and that no woman could resist his charm. He was convinced he controlled every piece on the board of his perfect life in the Beverly Hills high-rises. But there are forces in this world that go beyond money, deeper than power, more dangerous than the arrogance of a millionaire used to always winning. Hope Morales wasn't just a woman who defied his beauty standards. She was a silent storm that had been waiting for the perfect moment to unleash her fury. What started as a cruel game among millionaire friends would become the most brutal lesson Diego ever imagined receiving. Because when you toy with people's destinies, when you destroy lives without looking back, the universe has a very particular way of sending you the bill, and that bill always comes with interest that no fortune can pay. This is the story of a man who bet with the wrong heart, of a woman who turned her pain into the perfect revenge, and of how love can be born even in the most hate-ravaged terrain. Get ready to see how far a person can go when they have to choose between revenge and forgiveness, between destroying the one who destroyed them or giving life a second chance. Because sometimes the most dangerous bets are those where the heart is the only currency. The air in the exclusive Beverly Hills club was thick with single malt scotch and the smoke of the most expensive cigars. Diego Hernandez walked through the room with the confidence of someone who knew that everyone in that room respected him, envied him, or both. His Italian shoes echoed on the marble as he approached the group of businessmen surrounding Maurice Vega, his lifelong friend and accomplice in countless conquests. "Look who's here," Maurice announced with a mocking smile that Diego knew perfectly well. The great Diego Hernandez, the man who conquers anything he sets his mind to. Diego smiled, enjoying the attention. "I only follow my standards, Maurice. I like quality in everything I do." "Oh, the high standards you have," Maurice scoffed, exchanging knowing glances with the others. "Everyone knows you only go for women who could be on the cover of Vogue. For you, it's all about appearances, right?" The friends started laughing, knowing exactly where the conversation was headed. Diego maintained his smile, but something in Maurice's tone made him suspect a provocation was coming. "Let's make a bet then, Diego," Maurice continued, approaching with a defiant expression. "One that really tests those skills of yours." "Continue," Diego replied, crossing his arms. "You know I love a challenge." Maurice discreetly pointed to the other side of the room where a woman was chatting animatedly with a group of people. "Hope Morales. I bet $1 million you don't have the guts to marry her and stay married for at least 6 months. Diego followed Maurice's gaze and observed the woman. She was strong, with a warm smile and a natural confidence that radiated strength. She definitely didn't fit his usual standards. $1 million for 6 months of marriage? Diego smiled arrogantly. "Seems like easy money, Maurice." However, what neither of them expected was that Hope would approach at that very moment, as if she had overheard the entire conversation. "$1 million?" she asked in a calm but piercing voice. "What's curious? I accept the challenge, but I have my own conditions." 3 days later, Diego arrived at the prestigious Pujol restaurant in Beverly Hills, adjusting his Italian tie with the confidence of someone who had never lost a seduction battle. The place, with its sophisticated atmosphere and spectacular city view, was perfect to impress, or so he thought. Hope was already seated when he arrived, dressed elegantly but simply, studying the menu with a calmness that Diego found disconcerting. She didn't seem intimidated by the luxury surrounding her, as if such places were simply ordinary for her. "Hope," Diego said with his most charming smile as he sat opposite her, "I chose this place especially for you. It's one of the best restaurants in all of California." She looked up, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of amusement and something he couldn't decipher. "How thoughtful of you, Diego, though I imagine this is part of your usual strategy." Diego felt slightly thrown off by her directness, but maintained his composure. "I have to ask you something that's been intriguing me. Why did you accept this so easily? Most women would have needed more persuasion." Hope took a sip of water, observing him with an intensity that made him feel like he was being evaluated. "Because I need to meet the man who bet on my life, as if it were a commodity." The answer took him by surprise. He had expected flirting, maybe a little feigned resistance, but not that calculated coldness. "It's not personal, Hope. It's just a bet between friends. You know how these things are." She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something he didn't. Hope opened her purse and took out a folder which she placed on the table. "Since we're going to do this, let's do it properly," she said, sliding the document towards him. "A contract with specific terms. 6 months as agreed, but with my rules." Diego opened the folder, surprised by the meticulousness of the document. Each clause was perfectly worded, as if she had been preparing for this for a long time. "I didn't come here to be conquered, Diego," Hope added, her voice now charged with a determination that sent a chill down his spine. "I came to conquer you." The city registry office in downtown Los Angeles seemed a strangely appropriate place for a ceremony that had nothing romantic about it. The grey walls and worn-out furniture clashed brutally with the love-filled weddings usually celebrated there. Diego wore an impeccable suit, as if he were closing another $1 million deal, while Hope wore a simple ivory dress that made her look serene and mysterious. The judge, an older man with thick glasses, recited the procedural words with the monotony of someone who had repeated the same ceremony thousands of times. Diego responded mechanically, but his attention was completely focused on Hope, who maintained an impassively calm expression. When it came time to exchange rings, Hope moved closer to him than necessary. Her proximity allowed her to whisper something only he could hear. "You know what it really means to marry me, Diego." He looked at her with a confident smile, believing that she was finally yielding to his charm. "It means I won the easiest bet of my life." Hope slipped the ring onto his finger with a delicacy that contrasted with the coldness of her next words. "No, my dear. It means your trial begins." Diego felt a chill run down his spine, but before he could ask what she meant, the judge declared them husband and wife. The few witnesses present applauded discreetly, but the tension between the new couple was so palpable the air crackled with electricity. While they signed the official documents at the registry office, Hope maintained the enigmatic smile she'd worn since they met. It was as if she was enjoying a private joke only she understood. "You're legally mine now, Diego," she murmured, tucking away her copy of the marriage certificate. "And I'm yours until I fulfill my purpose." Diego tried to decipher the meaning of her words, but she was already heading for the exit with determined strides. There were no kisses, no celebration, none of the typical joy of newlyweds, only a disturbing feeling that he'd entered a game whose rules he didn't fully know. Leaving the city governmental building under the relentless midday Californian sun, Diego wondered for the first time if he'd actually won anything, or if, without realizing it, he'd just signed his own death warrant. Diego's Beverly Hills mansion was a monument to success and opulence. With panoramic city views and a decor that blended contemporary American art with European pieces, every corner screamed power and wealth. However, as Hope toured the space with absolute indifference, Diego realized his palace wasn't having the intended effect. "Welcome to your new home," Diego said, extending his arms as if he were the host of a museum. "I hope you find everything to your liking, though it's only temporary." Hope stopped in front of a painting by Diego Rivera that had cost more than an average house. "Impressive collection," she commented without enthusiasm, "though I wonder how many lives were sacrificed to pay for it." The observation unsettled him, but he decided to continue his strategy of dazzling her. He opened a velvet box containing a diamond necklace he'd bought that morning from the most exclusive jeweler in Beverly Hills. "This is worth more than your annual salary," he said with a calculated smile. "Consider it a wedding gift." Hope looked at the glittering jewels for a moment that seemed like an eternity to Diego. Then, with a decisive movement, she closed the box and returned it to him. "Your money is stained with blood, Diego. I don't need anything that comes from that source." The words hit him like a slap. "Stained with blood? What the hell are you talking about, Hope?" She turned to him, and for the first time since they met, Diego saw more than coldness in her eyes. There was pain, there was anger, but above all there was relentless determination. "The blood of my family, Diego." The air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Diego felt his confidence wavering as he tried to process Hope's words. "Your family? But I don't understand what you're talking about." Hope walked to the windows overlooking the city, her eyes lost on the horizon as if she were remembering something painful. "You'll remember it all soon," she murmured. "Every decision you made, every life you ruined, every family you destroyed on your way to this mansion." Diego felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The woman he thought he could easily conquer was revealing herself as something completely different, something far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. The following weeks were a silent battle of wills. Diego decided that if he couldn't win Hope over with luxury, he would do it through control. He knew the right people, had the necessary connections, and was used to the world bending to his influence. What he didn't expect was to encounter such fierce and calculated resistance. One morning, while Hope was preparing for an important meeting with a potential client, Diego intercepted a call. "Good morning. I'm Diego Hernandez," he said into the phone, his voice smooth and persuasive. "I need you to cancel today's meeting with Hope Morales. A family emergency has come up." Hope appeared in the doorway of his office just as he hung up. Her eyes shone with a controlled fury that sent a strange mix of triumph and apprehension through Diego. "What did you just do?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. Diego leaned back in his leather chair, a smirk playing on his lips, the arrogance of someone who thought he held all the cards. "I'm only looking out for my wife's best interests. You don't need to work when I can support you." He stood and moved closer. "I can ruin your career with one phone call," he continued. "My contacts are in every major firm in this city. One word from me and no one will want to work with you." To his surprise, Hope didn't scream, didn't panic, didn't show the fear he expected. Instead, she laughed, a soft laugh, but laced with an irony that chilled him to the bone. "You think this is the first time you've ruined something of mine, Diego?" The question caught him completely off guard. "What are you talking about? I've never seen you before in my life." Hope moved closer, her eyes fixed on his with an intensity that made him instinctively recoil. "You have a short memory for someone who makes a career of destroying lives." "You did this before, Diego," she continued, her voice dripping with years of pent-up pain. "And this time I have the power." A cold dread settled in Diego's stomach. Hope's words weren't those of a woman desperate to save her job. They were the words of someone who had been waiting a long time to say them. "I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, but even he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. Hope smiled, and that smile held promises Diego was starting to fear. The tension in the Beverly Hills mansion had reached an unbearable point. For days, Diego had watched Hope's every move, every enigmatic smile, every comment laden with hidden meaning. The confidence he'd always had in his ability to control any situation was slowly crumbling, replaced by an anxiety he'd never known. That night, he found her on the terrace, gazing at the city lights as if searching for something in the distance. The night breeze tousled her hair as she maintained that unshakable calm that so unnerved him. "Enough games, Hope!" Diego exploded, his voice thick with a desperation he could no longer hide. "Tell me the truth. I know there's something more to all of this." Hope slowly turned to him, and in her eyes, Diego saw something that made him feel utterly vulnerable. It wasn't fear, it wasn't submission. It was cold, calculated satisfaction. "The truth?" she repeated, her voice soft but sharp as a razor. "The truth is, I married you to destroy you, Diego." The words hit Diego like a punch to the gut. He stumbled back, feeling his whole world begin to sway. "Destroy me? But why? What did I do to you?" Hope stepped closer, her eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and vengeance she'd been concealing for weeks. "Just like you destroyed my family 3 years ago." Diego felt the air leave his lungs. Fragments of memory began to stir in his mind, but he still couldn't connect the pieces. "I don't understand. Your family?" Hope smiled, a bitterness she'd been harboring for years etched on her face. "My full name is Hope Morales Vega, Diego. Do you remember the San Juan market now?" The market's name hit Diego like a bolt of lightning. Images began to form in his mind. An older man, desperate, pleading in his office. This was a land deal that Hay had considered just another routine business. A family that had lost everything when he decided profits were more important than people. "No," mumbled Diego, stepping back until his back touched the terrace railing. "Yes," confirmed Hope, her voice now loaded with all the anger she had been holding back. "You're starting to remember now, aren't you?" Diego clung to the terrace railing, feeling his legs give way. The memories now flowed like an avalanche. The office, the older man pleading, the disdain with which he had dismissed his pleas. Hope watched him with the satisfaction of someone finally seeing justice after years of waiting. "My father was an honest man," Hope began, her voice trembling with the emotion she'd held in for so long. "He had a small stall at the San Juan market. He sold spices, chilies, everything he'd learned from his father and grandfather. It was his whole world." Diego closed his eyes, but the images kept coming. He remembered that day perfectly. He had been reviewing properties for a shopping mall when that man had appeared in his office. "He came to see you," Hope continued, moving closer. "He begged you, 'Please, Mr. Hernandez, it's all I have. My family depends on this business.' Do you remember what you told him?" Diego opened his eyes, meeting Hope's accusing gaze. The words escaped his lips like shattered glass. "I told him business is business." "Exactly," she confirmed, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "You told him you couldn't make exceptions, that progress required sacrifices." "Do you remember his last words before leaving your office?" Diego swallowed, guilt crushing him like a slab of concrete. He said his children would starve." "He was right," Hope whispered, her voice cracking. "My father came home devastated. He had lost everything, the shop, the customers, Hope. He got sick with sadness, Diego. He literally wasted away because you took away the reason for his existence." Diego felt tears stream down his face, but Hope wasn't finished. "My mother couldn't bear to see him like that. The love of her life was fading away day by day, and she went with him. 2 months after losing the business, I buried both my parents." "Hope, Diego tried to speak, but she interrupted him. "And as if that weren't enough," she continued in a barely audible voice, "the stress, the despair, the loss. I lost my baby. I was 3 months pregnant when everything came crashing down." Diego fell to his knees on the marble floor of the terrace, completely broken by the magnitude of the damage he had caused. The days following the revelation were the darkest in Diego Hernandez's life. Guilt consumed him from the inside, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw the desperate face of Hope's father pleading for his livelihood. The image of an entire family destroyed by his greed had become a constant torture. Hope had returned to her daily routine, but now there was a palpable difference. There was no more mystery in her eyes, only a deep sadness and a distance that seemed insurmountable. Diego knew he had shown her his true self, and that he probably could never redeem himself in her eyes, but he had to try. One morning, without warning Hope, Diego went to the San Juan market. The place bustled with activity. Vendors shouting their prices, families buying ingredients for the day's meal, the aroma of spices and traditional food filling the air. He walked until he found the location where Hope's father's business had been. It was now a cheap clothing store, but Diego could perfectly imagine what it had been like before. A family stall full of dried chilies, aromatic spices, and the proud smile of a man who had built something with his own 2 hands. "Looking for something in particular, boss?" asked an older merchant from the neighboring stall in the Beverly Hills Farmers Market. "Did you know the Morales family who had a business here?" The man's face fell. "Oh yes, Mr. Robert. A good man, very hard-working. It's a shame what happened to them. The landlord who evicted them never understood that they weren't just selling spices, they were selling tradition, family history." Diego felt a lump forming in his throat. "Do you know if there are other families in similar situations?" "Unfortunately, yes, many. Big businesses come in, buy up the land, and the small merchants can't compete." That afternoon, Diego returned to the mansion with a determination he'd never felt before. He found Hope in the living room, reading. "Let me fix this, please," he said, his voice filled with genuine plea. Hope looked up, her eyes hard as stone. "How are you going to resurrect the dead, Diego?" "I can't," he admitted, kneeling before her, "but I can save others. I can prevent more families from going through what yours did." "I don't want your money," Hope replied coldly. "I want to see if you can really change." Diego nodded, understanding that words were worthless now. Only actions could prove if his remorse was genuine. 6 months later, the National Museum of Anthropology had become the setting for an event Diego had organized for small business owners from across the city. The halls that normally housed pre-Hispanic treasures now resonated with conversations about microloans, training programs, and growth opportunities for family businesses. Diego was on the stage, addressing an audience of merchants from the historic center, traditional market vendors, and entrepreneurs struggling to keep their dreams alive. His speech wasn't that of a condescending tycoon, but of a man who had learned the true value of honest work. "For years, I thought success was measured only in numbers," Diego said, his voice filled with a humility he'd never shown before. "But you've taught me that true success is measured in families that can move forward, in traditions that are preserved, in dreams that aren't broken." In the crowd, Hope watched him. For the first time in months, there was no coldness in her eyes. There was something different, something Diego had been waiting to see since he began his process of redemption. After the event, while attendees left with signed contracts and renewed hopes, Hope approached him. The silence between them was heavy with months of pain, guilt, and a transformation that had been as painful as it was necessary. "You really have changed, Diego," Hope said, her voice softer than it had been in a long time. "I thought you were incapable of change, but I see something different in you." Diego felt his heart quicken. "You taught me what really matters, Hope. You showed me that I had lived my whole life the wrong way." Hope closed her eyes, fighting back emotions she had kept buried for so long. "My father told me something before he died that I couldn't understand until now." "What did he tell you?" "He said, 'Sorry, mija, hate will only destroy you.' I thought he was being weak, but now I understand he was being wise." Diego took a step closer, his voice trembling with the vulnerability of someone completely exposing themselves. "Can you forgive me, Hope?" She looked at him for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I already have, Diego. Now forgive yourself." A year later, on the tranquil waterways of Xochimilco, Diego and Hope got married a second time. This ceremony had nothing to do with contracts or bets. It was a celebration of the love that had been reborn from the ashes of pain and redemption. Family and friends surrounded them in a decorated gondola, while mariachis played traditional songs about second chances. Life had taken a completely different turn for both of them. Diego had transformed his business empire into a force for good, creating decent jobs and supporting the communities he had once ignored. Hope was truly smiling again, and that smile had become the guiding light in Diego's every day. One spring morning, While having breakfast on the patio that had once witnessed the most painful revelation of their lives, Hope felt a familiar nausea that sent her rushing to the bathroom. Diego followed, worried. "Are you okay? Do I need to call the doctor?" Hope emerged from the bathroom with an expression Diego couldn't decipher. She sat on the bed, took her husband's hands, and looked at him with eyes shining with emotion. "Diego, I need to tell you something." His heart pounded, fearing something was wrong. "I just confirmed I'm pregnant," Hope announced, and then added with a radiant smile, "And the doctor says it's twins." Diego remained motionless for a moment, processing the news. When he finally reacted, pure and unreserved joy illuminated his face. He hugged Hope so tightly he feared hurting her, but she laughed through happy tears. "Twins?" Diego repeated, still incredulous. "We're going to have twins?" "Yes," Hope confirmed, caressing his face. "Two new opportunities to do things right from the start." Months later, as they gazed at their newborns sleeping peacefully, Diego asked, "What are we going to name them?" Hope smiled, remembering the long road that had led them to this moment of perfect peace. "Hope," she said, looking at her daughter, "and he will be purred." Diego nodded, perfectly understanding the choice. Because their children would be the living reminder that it's always possible to begin again.